Although Cat Daddy, I don't think is supposed to be sexual, but
you're
maybe
right.
maybe it plays on like Leather Daddy.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is I only was worried about that part. And I asked like a lesbian comic friend of mine, and she was like, I think people might read some queerness in that, in the Trash Daddy thing. And I was like, well, I don't want that because I don't look like stolen gay valor or something because I'm straight, so I don't want that either. But most people are like, no, you're fine. So I just rolled with it. But it's Trash Daddy because I mentioned I have sons. I'm the trash, not them. Like, I'm Tennessee trailer trash. They are little Californians,
Yes.
The older one's been a vegetarian for moral reasons since he was like 3 years old. And the 12-year-old's got long skater bro hair and stuff like that. They're very California-y, and I'm from rural Tennessee. So it's about that, dynamic.
Yeah, and from rural Tennessee, you didn't eat meat because, it was a little more expensive, and the hamburger helper was...
Well, I ate meat. It just came in a pot. Potted meat. You ever heard of potted meat?
Yeah, this is Spam, but
trailer
also...
pate. No, not even Spam.
Spam is more highbrow? That's
Spam
what you aspire to?
Canned meat.
Okay,
Yes, right.
yeah.
The potted meat specifically is like, I call it trailer pate. It's like ground up, like, awful, I think, OFFAL.
But also a little awful.
Yeah, and it really isn't any different from pate, except pate is made with high quality ingredients, and this is made from the stuff they sweep up off the slaughterhouse floor or whatever.
Wow.
But it comes in a little pan. But yeah, you'd eat that with like hot sauce and some saltine crackers, or like vaini, as we called them, or Vienna sausages.
Oh, shit.
You familiar with Vienna sausages?
Yes.
Those are called vaini sausages. So yeah, that's all meat from a can, but you could get... There's actually a cut of pork that I've only ever seen in my hometown, and I realized years later it's because it's like for poor people and it's cheap, but I love it. It's like very, very thin cut pork shoulder steaks, basically.
Yeah,
but
they throw steak on something.
Yeah.
And they claim to gussy it up, but we know what's going on.
There were options, most of which were like gross. Also, you'd eat, a lot of venison. People hunt deer and you eat that type of stuff. I don't want to make it sound like you had to do that to live. I just mean people ate a lot of like not overly high quality meat options in my hometown.
What about the shooting of smaller animals, your squirrels, your possums?
Yeah.
Question within a question. Do you go possum or opossum? For
Possum.
your people?
Possum for sure.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, the animal that we're talking about is literally the opossum, right?
Yes.
And then,
I think in textbooks.
It is. Yeah, that's the American opossum, but
Yes.
everybody just says possum. And then in Australia... Wait, is that right? Yeah, and then in Australia they have possums with no O.
Right.
But it's a very different type of creature. It's kind of more foxy, sort of, a little bit.
Australia is, of course, home to all the marsupials, and I believe the opossum is the only North American marsupial.
I think you're right. That's a fun fact.
That's what...
They eat all those ticks. They don't get rabies. Possums are buddies. I gotta, people... Possums, because they're so ugly looking.
They just look like the devil.
I know. People can't get past that. That's all that matters with the animals is like if they're cute or not.
Yeah.
If you're cute, you're probably okay. And if you're not, we'll either eat you or, shoot you from afar while screaming. But
shame
possums,
you, make stories about you.
Yeah, but possums are actually, they're cool, man. People don't know. I got my merch at present is a picture of a possum with a top hat on. It's got my name.
That's very fancy.
See, you get it. You understand.
Yeah. Was your son, your vegetarian son, is he big on the, you only eat the non-cute animals? Is this something he teases his younger brother about?
No, but he's not remotely preaching. The rest of us in the family all eat meat, and he doesn't care. He just won't do it. But when he was even when he was like 3 or 4, I asked him, I was like, why don't you eat meat? And he was like, because I like animals and I don't like it when people eat animals. And I was like, okay. Yeah. But then that's pretty much the only thing he's ever even said about it. But he's been a vegetarian his whole life.
Now, you said you're from, is it Salina, Tennessee? Salina, Tennessee.
Everyone who ever sees the name of my town written down says Salina.
Yeah.
And I'm sure those people are right. Mm-hmm. But it's our town and we call it Salinas, right. So that's what I'm going to go with.
The 700 of you get to decide?
Yes,
no, what's the population?
In the town itself, city limits in the actual town, it's less than 1,000. It's probably 800-900, something like that. And then in the whole county of Clay County, it's, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 maybe, something like that, but I'm not 100% sure.
So in Salina,
Yeah.
You mentioned that at 25 you had children relatively young. Would that be young or right on target for Salina?
No. That's only young for me as like a comedian and a person who lives in LA.
Yeah, LA,
My
right.
friends back home that I grew up with, they all have kids that are either my kids' age or older. You know, like that wasn't to them at the time. They're like, you know, what took you so long? Like that wasn't weird at all for where I'm from. But like I got two really good comedian buddies who are also from rural southern towns, but they're my age, and they both just had their first children like in the past 2 years. So they have babies right now, and I've got teenagers.
So you have a joke about how IVF and these advanced fertility options, that's a big kind of California West Coast thing, right? But the rural Tennesseans have a different version of fertility or a different approach to it, right?
Well, we're just damn, what do I even say in the joke? Basically you just can't stop us from having children.
Right.
We're just excessively naturally fertile. In the bit you're referencing, I hope I say it a little funnier than that, but I'm blanking on what I actually say. But yeah, white trash people just propagate. Like you don't have to take all these extra steps. White trash people are more fertile than an Amish cornfield.
There you go.
There it is.
That's good.
It didn't take me too long.
That's a good analogy. You know,
Yeah.
like you start off pretty early in the set saying that you're a giggle monger, which is a great turn of phrase. You have a few of these great 2-word turns of phrase, you know, or an Amish cornfield. And then you also have an observation about sometimes you use a phrase that's Southern and you go, oh no. Is this racist or Southern or just Southern? Like, what's the one about squirrels?
Well, I see, you know, somebody asked me, have you seen Jeremy lately? And it's like, dude, I haven't seen Jeremy in a squirrel's age, you know, because it pops in your head. It's like, wait, that's not racist, is it? Something I've been saying my whole life, you know, and a coon's age is not racist.
No,
but
raccoon.
Yeah, right. But like, you know, when you know the context of how many other things are racist in origin in the South, and not just the South, but in America and period, you might hear that and think like, oh, wait, have I been saying something racist my whole life?
Yeah.
But I think you're safe with that one.
Well, the other thing is that people will hear your accent and jump to, well, that must be racist, and work backwards from there, and you have the burden of proof upon you.
Very, very much so true, yes.
Now, is that good, or for comedy, is it a little bit of a secret weapon?
Yeah, I think it definitely has been a massive tool for me as a comedian over the course of my time doing it, which is good. That's lucky because it just is how I sound, you know, like I don't have to, it's not contrived or anything. It's just the way that I talk, but I do think it mostly works in my favor, but there's ups and downs to it. I've lived in LA for 8 years now, and at LA shows, sometimes people are like, I think they're mostly like confused almost if I don't like very early on establish like this is real.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing a character. There's not going to be some turn in a minute.
Yeah.
Like
you're not Andy Kaufman.
I just sound this way.
Right.
Like I pretty much have to explicitly state it. Sometimes there are people in LA, I can just feel to be like, what is happening right now? Because it just doesn't really happen out there generally at comedy shows that anyone comes up there sounding like this, and people do characters and weird shit, alty stuff or whatever. So I think sometimes people genuinely think. I mean, I had people say to me, even I'll stay in the grocery store, they'll be like, "Oh, I love your accent." I mean, if that's your real accent, like they assume that I'm faking it for whatever reason.
Yeah, but like still keeping it up when they encounter you in the kale aisle. Like,
yeah, well, in my head, I'm like, right. Yeah. I'm like, do you think that I'm like a method actor?
You're so freaking committed to the bit.
Yeah. Like a method actor, you know, who's like about getting ready for a role,
right?
Or
and
something,
what is
as
the
a
role
Klan
too?
member?
Yes.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes.
But do you think that it is for them just the confusion, and once you settle the confusion, everything's fine? Or do you think it's maybe a hurdle to get over? Like they do assume you're racist. They're a little on guard that you're going to really say something racist.
Yeah, I think so, depending on the crowd. Yeah.
Now, some crowds might want that or like that.
Right, yes. I definitely think that is a thing. I try to get that sort of out there first, too, without making it like explicitly political, but just basically like, yeah, I'm not racist, you know, like it'll be okay. And then, I mean, I'm self-aware. I make fun of that whole dynamic quite a bit, especially when I do like shows for general audiences in LA or New York for that matter, but I live in LA, that are definitely like about that. You know what I mean? Like whole thing about how like everybody hears me talk thinks I'm dumb. So I'm like overcompensating for that a lot. I'm using big words totally superfluously, you know, like in ways that are neither germane nor apropos. Like that, like this type of stuff that's like, it's all about that because I'm trying to make it impossible for them to not understand, you know, sort of who I am or what my thing is, basically.
Do you think it's not exactly the Southern accent, but your version of the Southern accent, which is a little Appalachian, isn't it? Yeah. Do you think that's funnier than just regular American Nebraskan?
I mean, look, I'm biased, but 100%.
I agree.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that it's like, me personally, my rankings, I'd put it up there with like a Scottish brogue in terms of funniest white people accents or whatever. Like,
of course, when you watch Train Spotting, they have to sometimes subtitle the Scottish accents.
Oh, that happens with Appalachian accents too. Like,
really?
Oh, yeah.
There's subtitles?
Yeah, they'll put subtitles on. You know, if it's an episode of Cops set in rural West Virginia or something, they'll have subtitles for what the hillbillies are saying and that type of thing. But
which is, if I were a dick, I'd say something like, which is really unfair since much of the people actually
read. Yes.
Oh, I wasn't thinking that. No, that's what I was thinking.
Wow, what was I going to say?
Funniest accent and
funniest accent. Yeah, there's a line. Jason Isbell, you know Jason Isbell, singer-songwriter?
Yeah, Drive By Truckers.
Yeah, right. He wrote it when he was with the Drive By Truckers, song called Outfit, which he wrote when he was like 24, and it's all about like fathers and sons, and it's crazy he wrote that at the age of 24.
Oh, my God.
But one of the things that he says in there is like, it's like a father singing to his son, don't do this, don't do that, whatever. And he says, don't worry about losing your accent. A Southern man tells better jokes.
Yeah.
And I've just always thought if I ever write a memoir or whatever, I'm going to ask Isbell if he minds if I put that in the, you know, the first page. What do they call that? You know, you put
preface,
a little quote
maybe?
In the front page. Yeah, the preface. That thing. I should figure out what it's
could
called
be the forward,
before I try to write a book.
I once found out the difference between the forward and the preface, but now I've forgotten.
Well, forward is like, that's something you get another person to write for you, isn't it? That's
there you go. This is the difference. Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so do you think let's break down why it's funnier. Is it funnier because people have certain associations, or is it funnier more inherently about the rhythm and that part of the rhythm where there's elongated vowels and that allows sort of chewing over excellent words like giggle monger? Or stand up. How do you say stand up?
For me,
you say
stand up,
but it's like a little stand.
Yeah.
It's almost the second syllable in there.
Me specifically, I think it's at least a little bit of both. I think the accent in general, I do think there's something inherently funny about it. Like you said, the rhythms and just the intonations, the way things are said, it just sounds funny to people. But then with me, it's also the expectations part because it's like, you know, I say big words and shit too. And that coupled with this accent is like seeing a monkey read a book or something. Like it's just funny to people, the juxtaposition of it, you know?
Yes. I also think the speed, it's funny because New York accents, and you do a bit about a Bronx a Bronx oncologist, I guess it would be. Or maybe just some guy from the Bronx who has some thoughts on oncology. But New York goes fast, right? And so there is something funny about boom, 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 rapid fire. But there's also something funny about taking your time and making the audience really work with you to think and be in your rhythm. And that, go ahead.
I mean, obviously you've seen my stuff and whatever, but I think that another thing that I do that is a little different or weird is because that's the common, you know, the conventional wisdom with Southerners and Southern accents, like it, you know, move like molasses, slowed down and laid back. But I would argue that I talk pretty fast, both in the like videos I make and also on stage. And it's like, I don't know why I do that. I've always kind of done that. And it's like, I try to, that also is a factor that makes it different, I think. And it's like, so I talk fast in a weird accent, but also work very hard to actually enunciate the words still. So it doesn't just run together into a garbled mess. But I say all that like I've sat down and like, you know, figured all this out, but it's just the way that I talk.
But it's also, it must occur to you, and you talk to comedian friends and other Southern comedian friends and California comedian friends, and comedians always talk about, why is this working? You know, it works for a reason. Right. Do other comedians, are they jealous of you?
Oh, I mean, well, it depends. There's a great many of them that would have no reason to be jealous of me. And then some, you know, might be for whatever reason, but not, I don't think it'd be any different than just anyone who, they perceive as being wherever slightly above them on the ladder could sell more tickets or whatnot.
See, I was just thinking in terms of like natural advantage, right? I always thought this with Monty Python. I love Monty Python. They're so funny. But if you transliterated that into just an American accent, they get 20% less funnier. It is a little unfair advantage.
I agree. Yeah, maybe, but I think, but I could be wrong. I don't think anybody who doesn't have this accent like really wants it. I don't think. Yeah. So I don't think anybody be like, man, I wish I sounded like that, so I don't think it's that. People used to tell me, but other like Southern comedians and stuff, they would be like, man, I can't believe the shit that you get away with.
Like what? What do they mean? What?
Well, I always did kind of like edgier stuff or whatever, not to jerk myself off. I'm just saying that's the type of thing I've always liked, like pushing buttons at least a little bit. So I'm talking back then before when I was completely anonymous and a young comic and nobody knew who I was. And I was in Nashville and Knoxville and Atlanta and these clubs. And I would do, bits about the Bible, making fun of the Bible or making fun of like the Confederate flag or any of this type of, or like making fun of homophobia or sticking up for gay people. Or I had a pro-choice bit that I used to do all the time, like that type of stuff that like other people would be like, I have no idea how you like got away with that in front of this crowd. But I always thought for that crowd, for those crowds at that time, it was because like they identified me as being like, one of them or whatever. So I had a longer leash. Like if a New York comic had come down there and said those bits like word for word in front of those people, it would not have gone over well. But they let me do it though.
But I also think if you did those bits, if a New York comic did bits questioning the Bible, they'd have to be really, really strong because some of comedy is the frisson of tension where you're defying expectations. And if the audience isn't essentially Bible believers, you doing bits about the Bible doesn't seem that dangerous or funny or entertaining to say a quote unquote sophisticated New York crowd.
No, well, that's another thing like that I want to point out to people sometimes about like you have to understand the context in which I started because all that stuff I just said, if I was doing that in front of like northern New York crowds or whatever, they'd be like, they're like, oh wow, you think the Confederacy is bad? What do you want, a cookie? Like Jesus Christ, that's the bare minimum. But at that where I was and 15 years ago, like that shit was edgy and pushing the envelope and everything, and so like it's just all about like everything's relative. It's all about context. But that's, I was kind of doing a similar type of thing basically from the beginning,
In Trash Daddy, you have an extended bit where you essentially embody a white supremacist. You have many jokes about they don't seem that supreme, but it's the premise of the bit is all the losses across the years, and you kind of act out him running a meeting that takes place over a few years. And I want to know if the joy of that bit, not the point, but what you like most about the bit is pointing out the losses or just embodying the sadness of imagining this white supremacist character and just how demoralized he is after a while.
People believe all kinds of weird shit right now. Like on a related note, I feel like white supremacy's been having a moment in this country the past few years. White supremacy's wild to me for a few reasons. First of all, I feel like every white supremacist I've ever seen is pretty much the least supreme looking motherfucker. Like, I've never seen an avowed white supremacist and thought to myself, behold, the pinnacle of man. It's not a bunch of Hemsworths walking around with swastika tattoos, It's not. Your average white supremacist walks in looking like Busted Magazine's fuck up of the year, 2005. Walks in with a tattoo on his neck of a skull that's got more teeth than he does. Walks in looking like he's about to invent a whole new type of hepatitis. Ain't even thought up yet.
Probably the second thing, I guess. I mean, I love to point out the losses too, but like at the end, I have him sort of like get overly frustrated by the end because there's like a dummy in the crowd who keeps asking these questions that piss him off. You know, it's like,
what's his name? Randy?
Bobby.
Bobby.
Yeah.
Who's
like,
Bobby in this bit? Is this a guy?
Based on? No.
Yeah, is this a guy you know? Is this the type of guy?
No. I just picked Bobby, and then one night early on, a friend of mine came who I realized while I was doing it that his name is Bobby, but I didn't make him Bobby. But in my head, I was like, he's going to think that I,
In your mind, is Bobby a dumb guy too dumb to point out obvious things, or is he like kind of a clever guy needling the?
No. To me, Bobby has no idea that he's like being sincere. So, like, for example, the main guy says something, hey, there's still no black people in country music, and Bobby's like, well, what about Darius Ruggers? Like, shut the fuck up, Bobby. Like that, and so. Yeah, that's fun.
So when you do that in front of Southern crowds, what's their reaction? Different from California crowds?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but the thing, like, you have to remember is, like, generally speaking, like this, I've scratched a scab off of my arm.
Is that symbolic?
I don't know. Yeah. Maybe. It's not a meth scab or anything, so I'm going to eat it. I said that as I lick my finger.
Well,
but
I'm
anyway.
also seeing some open wounds on your legs, Trae. I've been pointing these out. I don't know what's going on. Maybe possums?
I got eaten up, as we say, well, I just was in my hometown 2 weeks ago. And, there's still bugs there all over the place. So I got a lot of bug bites, and I guess I'm scratching them off and bleeding all over the place.
From what I understand, you're not necessarily the local boy who's made good in the eyes of the 1,000 Salinans.
No, I'm more of a pariah, I would think. Not universal. A lot of them are like cool with it and happy for me or whatever, but generally speaking, I'm a blood trader, unfortunately.
And there's the blood there on different limbs.
Yeah, it's not just talking about like lefty shit or whatever. It's also like at one point, Nightline or whatever sent like a camera crew and a journalist guy to go to my hometown with me and interview me and talk about what happened there, like the factory leaving and the economic devastation that led to the rise of their affinity for Donald Trump and everything, having been a blue county before that for a long time, all that stuff. Nightline came there to talk about that and cover, talk to me, and they interviewed me like downtown in multiple areas, and it's like ravaged. It's tiny, but it's also like run down and decrepit. And people got all mags. They're like, he's making the town look bad. And I was like, I would argue that the cameras make the town look bad.
Exactly.
By virtue of capturing how the town looks.
Yeah.
But they...
by the lens caps being off. Yeah.
But they... that type of thing just it didn't help me out any in the eyes of like my hometown people. And so a lot of them... It's a mixed bag, to say the least, for sure. I can't even remember what I was going to say before I started bleeding all over the place. So.
Yeah, that usually is a conversation.
Yeah, that'll
oftentimes
clean slate. Yeah, pretty quick.
Yeah. So one thing I keep thinking about when I listen to you and listen to the podcast that you do with Mark AG.
Yeah, weekly skews.
Yeah, weekly skews. I think about the overriding discussion about why can't Democrats appeal to men or appeal to people in rural areas or appeal to Clay County, Tennessee. A lot of it, a massive percentage of it is cultural. I also think how they talk, the actual word use is part of it. But what's your analysis of that? Since you're someone, I don't even know if you're a Democrat, you're definitely left, but you would probably want the Democrats to appeal more to Clay County than they do.
Yeah, if they were going to follow through on it, particularly, I'd like them to do things that, help people in Clay County, but because I don't see that happening from either side. But yeah, I think so I tell this story a lot, but still it's the first time on this show. But like I already alluded somewhat to like what happened with my hometown and everything in the mid 90s when I was like 10-ish years old. My dad owned the video store in town. If you remember what those were, video stores.
How many videos did he stock?
I don't remember, but it was a converted single wide trailer. So that's a single wide trailer that he put wooden letters, Crowder's Video on the outside of. So that tells you how big it was, but I couldn't tell you how many videos were in there. There was a porn section in the back that kept the lights on.
There was a curtain involved?
Well, there was a whole door, but a door and a curtain.
Fancy.
It was fancy, yes.
Yeah. Door and curtain.
Yeah.
The belts and suspenders of the porn video world.
Yes, absolutely.
And what percentage of profits were based on rewinding fees? Because I always thought that once DVDs hit, you lost out on that profit center.
Yeah, I don't know. I was a kid, so I wasn't up on the economics of it. I just know it was a cool place to be and hang out as a
and inspired
child.
you to be go in the entertainment.
Show. That's exactly 100% right. But he had that. His dad, my grandpa, had like a car lot and a garage, and my maternal grandmother had a country deli on the town square. Across the town square, my openly gay uncle and his partner in the 90s had a deli, a successful deli that they operated in Salina. And it all was around this factory, this clothing factory, Oshkosh B'gosh factory. And then after NAFTA passed, that factory moved to Mexico, and nothing ever came in to replace it. All those businesses closed. The Oxycontin showed up at the exact same time. Hilarious cosmic timing that was. But like, and those two things combined to just ruin my town essentially forever, right? But I have a vivid memory of sitting in my dad's video store. My whole family, I come from a family of like Southern Democrats, and my grandpa was like a traditional Southern Democrat, which is to say like, he was a little racist, right?
Yeah,
but he was
very traditional, more than a little, right?
Yeah, I know. Well, he wasn't in the Klan or nothing, but he was born in 1935 in rural Tennessee. Like he was not, he was a little racist, but he had been he had remained a Democrat through the years. They didn't lose him after the Civil Rights Act or whatever. Like, he stayed a Democrat. My whole family was
It's like an Al Gore
Democrats.
senior Democrat.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I remember sitting at the counter in my dad's video store, and my grandpa walks in holding a newspaper that I guess had something on it about NAFTA or whatever. He walks in holding the newspaper, and he slams it on the counter, and he says, "I'll never vote for another Democrat as long as I live." Right? And he didn't live that much longer after that. He probably only voted in one more election after that, but still, either way, I think he stuck to it. So that was definitely like a big part and part of the beginning of the end. NAFTA is something that was going to happen no matter what, in my opinion. Like, the Clintons were in office, they were neoliberals, they did it, but it would have been done either way because no one gave a shit about places like my hometown.
Yeah.
But
well, I would say, I don't know if NAFTA, that deal was going to be done, but the economic wins of taking an Oshkosh type factory and having it not be able to work out in a place like Tennessee, that was writing on the wall.
Right.
I think.
So, but still, like, the Clintons definitely got blamed for that, and the Democrats in general, and I think that was well, not the start. I mean, the start goes back even further with the shifting of the parties and all that, but like they somehow the shift to like the neoliberal stuff and everything, and they weren't the party of working people anymore or the middle class or any of that. And then the perception of coastal elitism and looking down your nose at people and that stuff. And then now in recent years after QAnon, it's like not only all that, but also they drink babies' blood and shit. So it's like it's just a lot. It's bad PR, man. It's a lot to overcome.
Do you think if the Democrats changed the way they sounded to people from your hometown versus if they had the perfectly aligned policies that really would best help the people of your hometown, what would be more important for the Democrats to actually gain the votes of people from your hometown?
Unfortunately, I think probably the former.
Yeah.
Because they don't, I don't know, people don't, it seems like policies in and of themselves don't apparently matter all that much.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, unfortunately,
But I want to interrupt. Is that necessarily just valuing style over substance? Is there something to, I don't even mean the diphthongs and vowels, but the language you use, the things you emphasize? I have listened to your comedy. I know where you stand on gay rights. I know where you stand on immigration and all these issues, but connecting to a people who aren't as progressive as you, don't you have to talk a little bit in a way where they say, he gets me?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it would be better. I mean, it's related to what I was saying earlier about when I was doing stand-up years ago in like Knoxville and saying like joking about those types of things, and other comics being like, I can't believe they let you get away with that. Mm-hmm. And I always thought it was because I sound like them.
Yeah. So is there a way for a non-white man to do it? Is there a way for someone with really good ideas to come in and just communicate, this guy's pretty normal and I think he has my best interest at heart, or this woman's pretty normal and I think she's offering a better vision of the future than, let's say JD Vance?
Look, I'm going to be completely 100% honest and say that, especially after the last election, a woman, I'm not sure. And I don't like that, I'm not in favor of that. That's just me being honest about what I think. I don't know that would happen right now. You said a non-white man. I think, yeah. Well, even then I was thinking, I don't know. You could find some appeal on the other side. I was thinking of people like Vivek or whatever. But even he, he'll go on Ann Coulter's podcast and she tells him to his face, obviously I'd never vote for you because you're an Indian, but you seem all right as far as that goes. And he's like, thanks. So it is more, that's the part that's hard for me. But there's definitely there is a lot of racism and xenophobia and that type of stuff that's just intrinsically tied into it all.
Yeah.
I won't always make the economic case about what happened in my hometown and they felt betrayed and all this stuff. And all that is true. But I can't ignore all the cultural shit too, which definitely is a big part of it.
That's true, but there was probably more xenophobia and racism in 1936 and 1948 when the county was so reliably blue and more or less backing Democrats and in many cases very, very important programs like the New Deal. That didn't change.
No.
That got better.
Yeah.
So you can't just blame it, not you, but if the analysis is, what are you going to do? They're racist. It might be good to appeal to the self-interest of racists that has something to do with non-racial policies.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. Believe me, again, I'm from this place, I know these people. So yeah.
And what do you think of JD Vance? Since he's not from Appalachia, he's from the Rust Belt, but he's trying to tell a story like yours and desiccated towns where he came from.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this part, but I know JD a little bit. His book came out the same year that I first went viral. We kind of burst onto the scene at the same time, and he just lapped me immediately, and now he's in the White House. But it did happen at the same time, so we met first digitally very early, we were DMing and then later texting and stuff dude, this shit's crazy, right? Because we were both going on TV and talking about rednecks and hillbillies and stuff and all this was happening.
Right. You were the liberal redneck and he was the hillbilly elegy. You could have been the liberal hillbilly. You could have been redneck elegy.
And it happened at the same time.
Right.
So we were in touch and everything. He was living in Columbus at the time, and I did a tour date in Columbus at the Funny Bone, and he and his wife came, and we went to a bar afterwards and hung out and drank beers and shit for a while. And at that point in time, he was he was a conservative, but that was back when very famously he was comparing Trump to Hitler and saying he was a scourge that was going to ruin this country. That's what he was saying at the time.
Yeah.
So
and when you meet his lovely Indian wife,
right.
You're oh, okay.
Yeah, no. So we got along just fine, and then to the point that over the years on my political podcast and other stuff, when he started running for Senate, he started shifting further that way. I gave him more, leeway initially than I otherwise would have, because I was like, no, he's all right. Hell, he's okay. And then, but finally it reached a point where I couldn't do that anymore. But yeah, he's, even having said all that, I read his book way back then when it first came out. And there were my first reaction to reading his book was obviously I very heavily relate to a whole lot of this. We had a very, very similar experience.
Because both your moms have addiction issues.
Drug addicted moms and all that, rural destitution and shit, whatever. And I guess he was sort of more of a kind of a tourist isn't the right word, but, he was a temporary.
Yeah, he would vacation.
He would come there, and
live
but I'm from there.
Yeah, you had no place to vacation to.
No, I literally didn't go on any kind of vacation until I was a legal adult with some friends of mine.
That's so funny. You're like JD Vance. Look at you with your vacations.
Yeah,
to the holler.
Yeah, right. But also, there were parts in it that I read at the time. I was like, I don't we're coming from almost the exact same place, but I don't get how he's landing on some of the stuff he's landing on in here. There was a part in there where he goes into this whole thing about payday loan stores, which I think are predatory and awful.
Well,
and he goes into this whole.
You remember what you said about the cameras and the lenses, and it just by vision makes it look bad. That's the kind of hard lift to prove that payday loans are predatory. Just looking at economics will prove they're predatory.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But in his book, in Hillbilly Elegy, he goes on this little aside where he's talking about those. He's like, people say that they're predatory. He's like, I can tell you right now, for people in my hometown, they're a lifeline. They're vitally important. All this. And I remember reading that, being like, where the fuck did that come from? And then And then I don't even know if this is true, but then I heard later that he had like investments in some, payday loan chain or something like that or whatever. And so I was like, well, that's pretty gross. And then also I felt like, to me, the central thesis of that whole book, or one of them anyway, was he was like, yeah, listen, these people are just kind of fundamentally broken in a lot of ways. Like they're just not. They ain't no count, as they would say back home. They're lazy. They're sorry. They don't want to work, that type of stuff. And that, that's kind of stuck in my craw, too, at the time. I was like, I don't think that's entirely fair. It's also weird to me that, I don't know that doesn't, well, they probably just didn't read the book. That type of thing you'd think would be an issue, too, for a lot of what is now his, primary demographic.
So most of the analysis of him is about him and a person's psychology, and maybe, and I've said this, how he needs a father figure, but also he falls in with Peter Thiel and, very rich people who sway him to his side. But do you have a different analysis of why he changed, or is it mostly personality?
Why he changed? I mean, I've always just assumed, I think he's basically bought and paid for, and it's like the way to achieve his ambitions and also like make the most, it behooves him personally to have changed. And
well, yes,
and
but this is to say, don't you think 30 years ago, that same guy with the same inclinations and some of the same experience, though the American economy wasn't where it was, he doesn't have to do that to excel within one of the two parties in America. It's MAGAism itself, writ large, that impresses itself upon JD Vance, and then he's smart enough, or let's say cynical enough, to know the way to advance within this world is to, deny certain elements of what I am and embrace certain elements of things you would never think I would be.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the whole MAGA and whatever, that whole thing is fundamentally changed everything about like American politics, but especially on the right and for conservatives, and that is a part of it. You have to you got to bend the knee, you got to get on board and ingratiate yourself and everything. So
not just as someone from similar backgrounds, but people who got out because of words, right? Yeah. It's not just you have certain convictions and ethics, and so you would never sell out. But when you look at JD, do you think he's being less true to himself just on an intellectual level? Like, what he thinks and how he can think, but now you're thinking about the things he says and you're saying, that's not even true. That's dumber than you are.
Yeah, I mean, I do think those things. That is what I have thought of. I have had exactly that thought about him before. It's like, I know you don't actually believe that shit, or I know you know better than that, or whatever. But then other times I'm like, is that almost giving him too much credit or something to say that? Like, in a way, that's almost letting him off the hook, kind of, by being like, maybe I shouldn't say that, because it's like, what difference does it make at the end of the day? He's still doing it and saying it. You know what I mean? But I have definitely thought before. You kind of, you know what you're doing here. You know what you're really doing.
Is that good or bad if you want to have hope? Let's say he's the next Republican nominee or president. Does that give you hope that he knows better, or does that make you more depressed that a guy who knows better is still doing this?
If he's entirely compromised by the Peter Thiels of the world and operating in the shadows and all that, then it's worse, I think.
Well, here's a scenario. Let's say Peter Thiel shaped him, and here is who he is. Then he becomes the most powerful person in the world. Let's take that as the scenario. Right. So is it better or worse that within him he knows these things are not true?
Well, again, if he's gonna be his own man in this scenario and be independent in that way and not be compromised, like I said, then I think that it's better, because the hope would be that, there's a line that he wouldn't cross, or it's like, he's just playing a role and he wouldn't actually take it that far. But that could also, that could be total cope, as they say.
On Weekly Skews, you talk this explicitly about politics, but maybe I missed it. I haven't seen it this explicitly in your stand-up, naming, say, JD Vance, or do you talk about Trump specifically? No.
Not really, every now and then. That's all very much by design. What I try to do is if you've seen my stand-up, recorded, you've seen it if you come to an actual show, the first 10 or so minutes will probably be somewhat topical or like political, and that's mostly just me trying to give my fans, like, give them what they came for.
The guy who found you
thing.
from the
the internet,
redneck,
right.
yes.
Give them what they feel like they signed up for.
Mm-hmm.
So I do that, and then once that's over, I mostly don't talk explicitly about politics, but it's still, I feel like a lot of it is still stuff that's like, if you are a fan of mine, you will appreciate. Use an example from the trash data that you saw, like that whole white supremacy bit. Like, that's about, you know, political and cultural, that's social commentary or whatever. It's just not like topical headline political jokes. And I do that type of thing. I got a big chunk right now in the New Hour about like public education and schools. And again, that's all adjacent to like politics, but I do that bit and have done that bit in front of like any audience, like not just my fans, you know what I mean? But like, it's twofold. First of all, it's practical. Like, if you stuff that's like more ripped from the headlines and that sort of thing, it's got a shelf life, as you know, so it almost feels like a waste of time as a comedian to like try to make a good bit out of that when you know it's going to have to go away relatively soon. And then the other part is that I just don't want the again, social commentary, if you want to call it that, talking about like issues and real thing and like heavy stuff or whatever. That is always the type of thing that has appealed to me very much as a comedian. That's always been my favorite type of comedy.
Yeah.
You know, like from the time I was a kid. So I'm all
like
for
Chris
it.
Rock.
Chris Rock is my number one.
Yes.
He's my all-time favorite. Like, he's my personal number one. So yes, Chris Rock. And like, so that I'm all about, but the like, the more, like I said, the more topical and political stuff that's like, I don't know, I'm just not as interested in it. It feels also like easier to me with my following, do you know what I mean? To just, whatever, goof on Trump for a while or whatnot. So there's a couple reasons why I try not to do it. But another part is like, if people bring family members or husbands or whatever who are not fans or don't know me or whatever, I don't want them to have a terrible time. So I try to joke about stuff that's like true to who I am and who people have seen me to be as a comedian, but without just baldly alienating, you know, some people right out the gate, basically.
We'll be back in a minute with more of Trae Crowder on Funny You Should Mention. I don't know if that's where the minute break is, but anyway, that's what Corey asked for, right?
Yeah.
All right. We're back with Trae Crowder, and we're talking about his influences. You know, he got a lot of acclaim as this liberal redneck. Is that, I'm not going to say a curse or a trap. Yeah. Is it something? It was a great label. It's great marketing, because it cuts through, and then people. It's also interesting, right? It's when you hear, it's like the sweet and salty. When you get two disparate tastes, you do raise your ear or antenna and go, "Oh, tell me about that," and then you deliver. But at this point, is it something to, I don't know, prison's too strong, but something you feel you got to live up to or play up to?
Yeah, no, that's pretty astute on your part, because it has been an annoyance, at least at times. There's certain times where I wish that I didn't even like have that moniker, but I wouldn't change it though, because like you said, I think that name, me putting that name on those videos, and when I first started them in 2016, and I don't think it would have gone viral the way that it did if it wasn't called that, and I don't think it would have had the effect that it did on my life and career and everything. So I wouldn't change it, but yeah, I don't. From the very beginning, when I did go viral, and it's like, let's try to book some shows and go on tour, and I was like, and I just had a manager at the time, and she was like, do you want to tour as, your name or as the liberal redneck? And immediately I was like, my name, 100%. I was like, I don't even want the liberal redneck anywhere in the actual. I don't want it to say, Trae Crowder as the liberal redneck. It's like, if you want to put it in the bio part, like in small print somewhere, that's fine. But I wanted to just say my name.
Larry, the liberal redneck guy.
Right, exactly. And so from the very beginning, I was like, I don't want that. And then now the other thing is, like, comedy has changed so much. American culture has changed so much. Like, it's only gotten more. Those videos were based on a stand-up bit that I did at the time that I used to close with. It was basically just the same thing. meat of it was just me yelling really progressive shit in a super rednecky fashion. And it used to do, like I said, I'd close with it. Always did great. And it's like, even in front of conservative audiences, it did great because it was like, it was a joke. You know, they were like, that's a funny thing.
But also some of the stuff you were saying was like kind of crazy liberal stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't just something that they would maybe say on that stage from the DNC.
No.
Yes.
And it's like, and they were, but it was like, that's, you know, that's a funny thing to be.
Yes.
Both super, you know, and it's like, so even conservatives would laugh at it in a kind of like, how silly is that sort of way. But it was fine. Like, it didn't piss people off.
Right.
Right. And then now all these like years later, and I'm like married to it. And it's, to some people, it's just like a immediate non-starter for like multiple reasons.
It keeps some people from the shows.
I think some people, yeah. I think so, I think there's an element of people who read that and they're like, no, thank you. Just because it's like, it sounds gimmicky or whatever, like just that.
Yeah.
Then there's people who are like, there's people who would hear liberal in a name and be like, nope, I don't want any of that preachy bullshit, which I don't think I do very much of. Oh, and then there's other people who would see the word redneck and it'd be like, I'm not, you know, I don't need to hear some fucking, you know, blue collar comedy tour style,
right?
You know, truck fucking jokes or whatever. But
like best case scenario is maybe I come across as folksy, you know, like folksy's the best you can hope for when you talk like this. And my people got all these little sayings and phrases that help with that perception, especially if you're from the middle of nowhere like I am. But even that's not always great. You know, like I'll be at some party in LA, we run out of beer, and I'm like, well, guess somebody better ride into town, pick up some more. And they're just like, ride into town? What, are we out of sorghum? Has Molly took the fever? Why are you saddling up, cowboy? We'll just DoorDash it.
So I think there's a lot of downsides to it, frankly. But at the same time, I don't think I'd be sitting right here talking to you about any of this if I hadn't called them that to begin with. So
are there other comics? I'm not thinking of Gallagher, right? Or the unknown comic that's more of a 20 or 30-year-old bit. But are there other comics as defined by a label as you are that you didn't really want?
Didn't really want, I mean...
Well, I heard exactly what you said.
Yeah.
It helped you, but at this point, it's maybe not.
Well,
it's
if you're not,
onerous.
I've been thinking for a while now that I'm going to take it off the YouTube ones too, and I don't know why I haven't, but on the YouTube versions of videos I put out, those are still called liberal Reddit. Part of me is like, well, it's been called that from the beginning, so it's like they're all
brand.
together as a series.
Yeah.
But like on all the other social media platforms, like I don't ever even use that anymore. I just like post the videos.
Do you get as many views, or are you as successful on the other social media?
Generally. Yeah. But everyone still knows. You know what I mean? Like even if like a person like, oh, I love your Instagram, and on Instagram I've never even called myself the liberal or on these videos or whatever, but like those people will still know that I am that. Yeah. Or whatever.
Do you ever?
I don't know. And I don't know if there's other comics. I mean, I thought no, I mean, you don't count like there's Piff the Magic Dragon, obviously. That's he's crushing it in Vegas right now, and but that's like a full blown like character thing, you know.
And there are characters, there are comics who are so associated, Doug Stanhope with, pot or something like that. But yeah, yours is a little different. Yours is a little like Gallagher in a way. Like they expect you to smash the watermelon at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever thrown out a bit because you said, no, this is just me being in the last few years, this is just me being the liberal redneck?
Probably, but I think I have a lower standard for myself with that first part that I was mentioning earlier, like when I first started, because I call that like the cheap heat part, because that's also where I'll do like local shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just to like get started. And I know that I'm not keeping any of that. The minute I'm saying, so like, there's definitely been things I've said in there where later I'm like, nah, it was pretty hacky or that was bullshit or whatever. But I know it's going away anyway. Yeah. So I don't really worry that much about it. I've definitely had bits
that's like
that
criticizing Springsteen for when he's singing because, or, damn, what's the song where he sometimes says, the real lyric is driving along this Missouri night, but depending where he's playing, he'll say this Wisconsin night or this Tennessee night, or you change the local.
That's in. I believe that's a pro wrestling term, or at least they took it. I've got a buddy that's huge into pro wrestling, and he told me that. But that exact thing you're describing in pro wrestling, they call that cheap heat.
That's awesome.
It's like, hey, how you doing tonight in Nashville? And you know it's going to get a big pop just because you're in Nashville, or make something about the Titans or whatever, like that. So yeah, but I've had bits where like there's been parts where I get annoyed at myself for like the reason you just said, and usually I'll try to cut that part out or rewrite it or something if I feel like it's too on the nose or too like pandery or whatever.
Now, you have some bits that I think in another comics, just phrasing, would come out more straightforwardly as, I'm not going to say conservative, but without the valence, and I'll tell you exactly the one I'm thinking of, oh, this is a liberal guy saying it. You do jokes about Portland, right? And the joke is that it's two things, right? It's penny farthing bicycles and ridiculous handlebar mustaches and other kinds of mustaches.
Yeah.
And it is dangerous Antifa guys.
Right.
Like it's both those things.
Right.
And so I think 9 out of 10 comics will just straightforwardly criticize the city or that milieu. But you do the joke where the joke is more on the kind of conservative who doesn't understand that, or tries to make other people, scare other people by telling them that there's only this one kind of guy when there's really also this other kind of guy. Your joke is on the conservative.
Yeah.
I think most comics would make the joke about the people of Portland.
I try to, I feel like there's a couple times where I do something similar to that later in the set in the show when I'm talking about parents and parenting and everything. And I talk about like, and I've heard a lot of different bits that are sort of around the same idea. It's like, back when I was growing up, we just fucking ran wild. Like parents, they didn't give a shit, right? And that's like but like, I feel like most of the other comedians I've seen do that bit, it's like, and that's why we're better than the kids today.
Right.
These kids today are fucking soft. This was a good thing.
Yeah.
And when I do it, I'm like, what the fuck was wrong with them? That's insane. Do you know what I mean? Like, we could have died. Like, I'm criticizing it instead of doing the whole like kids today suck thing. So like there's a few instances where I do the thing that you're talking about there, and I do that. But and aside from just the Portland stuff, that's the other thing too. Having lived in California for a while, I've had plenty of bits and everything that make fun of like coastal people or Californians or stuff that would be more liberal on the preceding special. I had a whole bit that was like ripping on Europeans basically for all the shit they talk about Americans. And it's like that, I think that bit could straight up be done by a like noted conservative comedian and their crowd wouldn't bat an eye. Cause it's like patriotic and like fuck Europe and all this stuff. And it's, so, I mean, I do try to switch it up.
Is there a little difference in how you do it than that imagined conservative?
Well, that bit I'm talking about now is, I mean, it's pretty old and I haven't done it in a while. So I'd have to think if there's anything in it that I don't think a conservative comic would say, but I really don't. It's more tongue in cheek with me.
Yeah.
So maybe there's that, just kind of, if that makes sense, where it's like they might do it. It's like literally like, no, fuck France. Where it's like, there's a wink with me when I'm doing it. Like it's kind of more jokey.
Do you think that the Antifa guys really exist, or do you think they're mostly the portion of the conservative imagination? Like real dangerous Antifa guys in Portland.
They probably like do exist. I would think in much, much smaller numbers than papaws think. Yeah.
Because making fun of the boogeyman, I mean, if there is a boogeyman, that's a different kind of humor, I guess.
Well, but you'd say like Antifa guys, like I feel like Antifa itself is barely a thing. You know what I mean? There's not like, it's not centrally organized. I'm not getting memos or nothing. There's not a newsletter you can sign up for. Like, so there's that. But in terms of like those dudes, like, kind of badass far left anarchist brick throwing motherfuckers. I mean, I think that I think it'd be crazy to say that they don't exist. And if they exist anywhere, it's definitely Portland. But I still think it's like way overstated. Or it's like, I mean, just recently, the most recent LA protests and stuff. Like I've been in New York for like 4 or 5 days now, but like it started last weekend. I live in LA. I live in the Valley specifically. And I was there for like 3 days while it was happening over the weekend when it was really ramping up. And I'm getting all these text messages from friends and family back home and everything. They're like, they think it's fucking Mad Max out there.
Right.
Like they're like, are you okay? Are you getting out or whatever? And it's like, it's 99% literally, like I literally just walked home from the ice cream parlor at twilight, like, you know, with a cone in my hand, smiling, listening to fucking.
With no Waymos on fire in your path.
Like you literally wouldn't even know that anything was happening here if you didn't turn the news on. And so I just think anything, if it bleeds, it leads. It's not even just a purely political thing. That type of stuff is always just going to get overstated no matter what.
Yeah.
And I think that's how, because I go to Portland every year to do stand-up, and same thing. I've never seen any of that wild shit. And I'm sure they are there, but it's just, I think they do exist. It is without a doubt 100% very much exaggerated, though, at the same time, I think.
The other part about people who are not from LA worrying about you, perhaps very kindly, they don't understand maybe that you could live, let's say, 4 miles away from a place, but it's essentially another state.
Yeah.
And not the Tennessee, Kentucky version. Like if this is in a place called Paramount, California, which I've never heard of, have you?
No,
like,
I hadn't.
So you're from LA. We've never heard of California.
Well, I'm a bad example for that because
you've lived there for years.
I know, but I'm saying I still can't remember the damn neighborhoods and everything.
There's
But
this place called Paramount,
right.
and then another ICE raid happened in Wilshire, which a lot of people understand. These are like saying, hey, you're from Iowa. I heard there was a raid in Kansas or Missouri.
Yeah, it's mostly isolated to those two. It's just like a couple of blocks, really. And also, even the stuff, even in those blocks, like they're acting like people are dying every day and that type of thing. It's like, even those Waymo cars, it's like, look, I'm not like advocating for property damage, but if you're going to damage property,
no one's by definition, no one's in it.
That's what I'm saying. They drive themselves. They're owned by Google. It's like, who really gives a shit about burning I don't, sorry. But yeah, so I don't know, the whole thing. It's annoying too when you like live there because it's like, I don't know, you get more defensive about it, I guess. I don't consider myself, and I don't think I ever will consider myself an Angelino, really. always say I'm putting the bass in ambassador, like that's how I feel. I feel like a displaced Tennessean and always will, but still, it still is annoying, even just living there and having been there for a while, just the way that it gets covered sometimes.
By the way, you mentioned that you think it's more interesting, artistically funnier to do a riff on instead of saying, and we were tougher as kids to say that things were really dangerous. Gary Goldman does the same thing.
Oh, really?
Yes, I know.
I just left him.
He does a great bit about how in the 70s people would like shove. First of all, we were constantly dehydrated, and people would shove your face into the water fountain, and it was much worse.
Right.
We have made progress.
Right.
And as he told me, it's just so much more satisfying not to make the easy joke, to say, what do most people think? All right, let's find a way to say kind of the opposite of the expectation.
Right.
And that's also where a lot of comedy lives, just maybe benignly upending expectations, but certainly upending expectations. So I could see why you'd be more attracted to that.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It definitely is more fun, and it's also there's an added layer for me too, because it's like I feel I get sensitive about being perceived as being more pandery and that type of thing.
Yeah, So in the very beginning of this interview, you noted that you had kids at 25, and that's normal for everyone back home, but very exceptional for the milieu you live in California. Do you think one is better than the other? We understand socioeconomically why it happened, but what's the good way to do it, do you think?
I mean, I go back and forth on it, and obviously I'm biased, but here's what I'll say. I wouldn't change anything about it. And one of the reasons is like deeply personal. It's because my dad died of cancer when my youngest son was a newborn, and the oldest boy was, 14, 15 months old. But my dad got to know him and be a grandfather or whatever. So, like, there's no way I would go back and, take that away from him regardless. But even putting that aside, I'll say this, physically speaking, it sucks. The socioeconomic realities of our society are a real shame because there's no doubt in my mind that physically speaking, objectively, humans are meant to have children at a earlier age in terms of like energy and having it and the physicality of it all and not how tired you get. Even me, I think back, it's like having two that close together, and the younger one had RSV when he was a newborn and barely slept at all. And it's like, I was a zombie at 25. If I was 40 and had that going, it'd be a nightmare. And then also, when the second one goes to college, I'll be 44 or 45. You know what I mean? Which is like still young. So that's the other side of it. It's like, so I wouldn't change anything about it. And I think there's a lot of upsides to having kids younger than people want to these days. But I get that it's just not realistic for a whole bunch of reasons. People can't afford to do that anymore. Yeah. And so, like, I understand that. So,
well, also women working. Like, when you don't have opportunities to go to grad school or to work for a law firm, that plays into it, too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they have to. You got to work on your career and be ambitious and hustling and stuff when you're in your 20s. And if you if you have kids at that time, it'd be hard to. So, from a practical perspective, I totally get why people wait longer and longer. But I think there's definitely some upsides to having done it the way I did, even though, again, we did not plan it. It just happened. But
Twice.
Well, the second one was planned.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to have an only child. And also, my wife was like, I don't know how this sounds, but she wanted to get the damage to her body over with. She was like, I'm wrecked.
This is my breeding period.
I'm wrecked. Let's just run it back, get it over with, because we want at least two. And so we did, and they're 13 months apart, and then we shut it down right after that. Well, I mean, I've been saying I was going to go get snipped forever, and I haven't, but at least ostensibly shut it down. The plan is to have shut it completely down all those years ago, and so, yeah.
When politicians or political people seize on something like that, a cultural difference, and say, see, this is how Democrats, liberals, coastal elites get it wrong, do you think that they're being dishonest? Like the natalism argument and movement, which is people should be having more kids. But as you point out, like, it's harder for some people in some circumstances. And maybe if you're living in a town that was gutted by NAFTA, having kids isn't really a choice you're making. It's just the way and the rhythms of life. Anyway, the question is, when natalism becomes an issue, is that helping politics, or do you think that's mostly cynicism on behalf of the person saying that, see, this is the way that the normal, mainstream, regular America gets it right?
I don't know. I feel like the natalism arguments and stuff that I hear in like American politicians recently, I can't help but feel a little bit weird about them because they feel kind of like, brood Mary and, Handmaid's Tale-y and that type of shit. I get why they rub people that way. Putting all that aside, I mean, look, people generally need to keep having babies or we're not going to be around all that much longer. So, like, I'm not saying the idea of that by itself is bad, but I think that it is cynical. It plays weird to me. It's also cynical, and I think is ignoring a lot of the realities of how that whole thing actually works. And they don't intend to do anything to fix any of those problems that, make it hard to have kids like that. It's like, I know also, it was not just here, like, obviously Japan's freaking out about it and Korea and other places too, but they won't change any of the things that are part of their culture that are leading people to not have kids anymore. They're just like, are trying to guilt people into having babies. And it's like, well, that ain't going to work. You need to do something if you want, if you want people to. I
mean, are they really even trying to guilt people into changing, or are they just saying our way is better? You fucked up. Or are they trying to take advantage of someone who's a woman in her 40s without babies and feels bad about herself. Right. Injecting, you feel bad about yourself. Maybe come to our side. Mm-hmm. Taking advantage of that. Do you think there's anything that the right or conservatives do or say that they genuinely think either a plank of their party or a way of looking at the world that is superior to the way the left looks at things?
I mean, I'm sure I could come up with some. Well, okay, this I guess is maybe more libertarian, but I've always said, like, I'm a big believer in personal responsibility.
Yeah.
That's not me say. I'm also for strong social safety nets and stuff. I just mean on a personal level. Like, for example, so like I live in godless California, right? Deep, deep, deep blue state. And like one thing they just did recently was they made it illegal to sell vapes that are flavored, right? Because, well, kids get hooked on those and that's bad or whatever. And my whole thing is like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm a grown man. If I want to fucking smoke a Fruit Loop vape, I pay my taxes. I'm 40 years old. Like, who the hell are you to tell me I can't do that? California.
Yeah.
Like that type of thing. Like, I've always been a big believer in that in like just personal responsibility and that whole like, I think Mark Twain, if the internet is to be believed, Mark Twain said it about, I think, like censorship, but he said that it's like, that's telling a man that he can't eat a steak because a baby is unable to chew it, like that type of thing. I just am not, not in favor of that sort of any kind of like nanny state bullshit. And then, but they will, and I mean, I don't even know if I want to get into all that. I also thought before it spiraled out of control and it got way overstated, the whole like cancel culture thing and whatnot. But I'm also real lax on. I mean, I'm a comedian. Like people get too riled up about like words and offensive stuff and that type of thing. I think a lot of it is like, it's like I think it's all about context and intent.
Right.
Like there's just certain things like it's like people go out of their way to not listen to what the actual point of it is. It's like, who's the actual butt of the joke? What's it actually saying? What's the context in which it was said? Like it's not, everything's not in a vacuum, like those types of things do matter.
Clearly enough. And do you think that people would be wise or insane to vote on that issue?
Oh, yeah. No, I think there's more important things than what you're allowed to joke about.
Yeah.
But
it is onerous and oppressive. I mean, it is annoying, right? And people use the ballot box as an expression of what they're thinking and what's annoying them. So that is true.
Yes, and what's annoying them is just the left, I think.
Yeah.
Like that's annoying. Just a part of it. That's part of what's annoying about the left. And they, so yeah, I don't know. So
last thing that I want to ask you about is, do you think some of what you articulated as libertarianism or let me smoke my mango vape, does it have anything to do with how you grew up as, I've heard your bit about this, and then I heard you explain the actual bit. Your father didn't pay you lived with your father. He didn't pay child support to your mom.
Right.
Under the legal principle of
that's bullshit.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
And then you essentially had to pay your own child support.
Almost. I don't know how much that has anything to do with what I said a minute ago about personal responsibility, but yeah, it was this weird thing where, kind of like you said, so my parents got divorced when I was 7, and my mom got full custody of me and my sister because, like, in 1993 in rural Tennessee, that was just like the default. That's pretty much just what happened. So she got full custody of us, even though she was not in good shape and was a wreck. But so she was struggling with addiction back then.
Right.
Yes. But she got custody of us, but we lived with my dad like all the time, and so he was just like, "Well, I'm not going to pay her child support if they live with me, like, why would I do? But he didn't like tell anyone that or like go talk to a judge. He just like stopped paying it. Right. My mom, I guess, at least to her credit, she didn't have the audacity to complain about it or demand that he do it, knowing that we weren't living with her. So she just kind of let it ride and he didn't pay it. And it just went that way for years. And then years later, I remember we had to like go to the courthouse at one point, me and my sister, when we were probably 11 and 14 or something like that, and testify or whatever the right word is to affirm that we did in fact live with my dad for that whole time. Like say, yes, no, we've been living with him because he had finally gotten into some trouble with it. And they gave him a slap on the wrist, but also I guess it's like, you're going to have to pay this back however many years it takes. Right. Well, then a few years later, my dad dies.
Yeah.
And, I had forgotten about all of that. I never had to deal with any of that. I was a kid, but when he dies, the state of Tennessee called me and they were like, "Yeah, he has this outstanding balance for whatever." It was like I think it was like $15,000-$20,000 or something like that,
which is a lot of VHS tapes in the single wide. Yeah,
it's like, and I was like, "Okay, well, I don't know what you want me to do about that." And they were like, well, we were wanting to know, are there any assets at all that like you're intending to liquidate? Like, is there anything? Is there an estate? And I was like, no.
They're using vocabulary words.
Yeah, like not an estate.
You've heard about in books.
Like, how many estates you think are even in Clay County? I was like, but there was the house like that my dad got from an FHA loan or like rural low income housing thing, but a house that we grew up in. And I was like, well, that's literally it. There's the house I grew up in. That's all there is. And I wasn't selling it either. And she was like, well, here's what you could do is you sell that house and then you give us this $20,000 back and then the rest of it you could just keep. And I was like, wait, so you're telling me that I need to sell the house that I grew up in where my Meemaw still currently lives so I can pay y'all my own child support? Like, that's what you're telling me I have to do? I have to pay you $20,000 of my own child support? And she was just like, it's like that was the first time that had occurred to her, you know, because she was like, you know what, can we call you back a little later? And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then later, like a manager from that office called it back. And I still kind of can't believe this actually happened. He like called me back and he was like, yeah, listen, you're right. Don't worry about it. We just wiped all that out.
Oh my God.
Gone.
So
and
maybe
like,
that's bullshit actually had some legal resonance.
Right. Well,
because that's bullshit was met with, no big deal.
Yeah.
What the how is that possible?
Well, because I said when that happened earlier in the set, I'd said, I was like, I'm not really white. I'm white trash. Like, there's a difference between like there's like upstanding white, and then there's white trash like me. And I'm white trash, and I do a whole thing about that. And then later I tell the child support story, and at the end when I say the guy called me and said, don't worry about it, we wiped all that out, we took care of it. I said, that's the first time in my life that I was like, damn, maybe I am white. It just worked out.
The only reason I said something about the libertarianism being informed by that was that's an example of the state doing something stupidly to compel, if not behavior, then money, take your money. Now they relented, but I could see where someone would come away with, maybe the government's not all on the ball, given this example.
Well, because it was just like, just bureaucracy, they're just like going, this is how this works.
Right,
Like I said, it was like she hadn't even thought about the reality of it. She was like, this is just how this works, even though it was completely nonsensical.
Trae Crowder is the trash daddy and so many other things. We won't mention all the other things, but as you can see, a very interesting, thoughtful guy. Also has a weekly podcast called Weekly Skews, which is just, a skew on the weekly news. Mm-hmm. Trae, great to meet you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
That was excellent. Thank you. What's the Jay Crowder story?
Oh, just that when he was at Marquette, I was starting in comedy, and I'd just gotten a Twitter account, and I used to tweet at him all the time. He was like, a star in college, obviously at Marquette. Great. And I used to tweet at him in college, pitches, like log lines for episodes of the sitcom that we could do together. Trae and Jay.
The Crowder Boys?
Yeah, the Crowder Boys. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it'd be like on this week's episode, Jay lights up Louisville for 35 points, and Trae has a zany run-in at the laundromat. Like, it'd be that type of shit.
I'd greenlight that.
Yeah, and it was, but like some of his like buddies, some of his crew or whatever, like retweeted some of them and liked them or whatever, but like he never actually responded to it. And then years later, the New York Giants drafted a Trae Crowder, T-A-E Crowder. I thought about revisiting the whole thing, adding him to the script.
Given the wildfire that it caught the first time, of course, yeah. And then who's the Louderwood Crowder guy? That right one guy? Oh,
Steven?
Yeah, Steven.
Yeah, my cousin Steven.
Yeah.
No relation, but yeah, he's very different.
Is he a comedian? Does he say he's a comedian?
He does say he's a comedian. Yeah. I don't know how much he does it. I don't know if he did it or for how long before the punditry stuff. Yeah. I don't know any of that. But yes, he says he does self-identify as a comedian.